We are back on the 1973 Dodge Charger. We're getting it ready to start hitting the track again for this season. We're a little bit late, but I've had a lot of stuff going on. I just got back from LS Fest West, and it's really time to start focusing back on the Charger. So a couple weeks ago, I talked about installing some goodies on this Charger to get it back up and running. As you guys know, there's two ways to make a car faster, and that's either make it lighter or make it more powerful, and we're going to try to do a little bit of both. All right, so last night I cleaned up a bunch of the wiring. As you guys can see, I don't have a huge mess here by the headers anymore. I don't have any wires hanging down onto the headers anymore. I cleaned up the whole wiring. I eliminated all the wires I didn't need from the factory module, and everything's all good to go there. On the driver's side, same thing. I had a whole bird's nest of wires and a bunch of wires that I didn't know where they went. I eliminated as many wires as I could, and I tested everything, so we are all good there. The object of today is to actually redo my fuel system and replace the carburetor. The carburetor we're going to be using is the Proform 67302, which is a 750 drag racing carburetor, and it is a mechanical secondary, and as you guys can see, it is the purple and black variant. I kind of teased this carburetor in my last video, but today we're actually going to be installing it. This carburetor was already previously installed on my dad's 1970 Challenger when we were breaking that in not too long ago. Maybe I'll post up a video on that if you guys are interested. But this carburetor was working flawlessly on the Challenger, and I'm sure it's going to work fine on the Charger as well. Like I mentioned before, this is their drag racing carburetor, so there is no choke horn, and this is a mechanical secondary, so we've got the secondary linkage here with its own external adjuster, which is super awesome. I love that. And typically when I run larger cams, it's a lot harder to set up the secondary side because the adjustment screws on the bottom because they don't want you messing with it. On this one, they know you're going to be installing it on a big cam or big motor, and so they want you to run that secondary adjustment in a little bit, and so they give you that adjustment, which is awesome. This is also a dual feed style carburetor, runs down leg boosters, and I don't remember what the jetting is, but it should be fairly close with the Charger, if not a little bit rich. So we're going to be testing that out first, and then go from there. Alright, so I just finished installing the new Proform 750. I've got the vacuum line hooked up for the Vacuum Advanced Distributor. I've got that hooked up to a manifold vacuum. And then I've got the 3/8 hose going to my brake booster. I'm not even sure if the brake booster even works, but I have it hooked up anyway. If I notice that I can't get the idle down, the brake booster's probably shot, and then I'll plug it and then we'll do something else with that. I haven't put any fuel in the carburetor yet. I'm going to go ahead and pour some down the throat, and then we're going to try to get it started. I've already turned the ignition key on. My battery is hooked up, and then I'm going to use this remote starter so I can play with the carburetor while trying to crank it over. You know what, I'm also going to turn the idle up a touch because I don't know what kind of idle it's going to want, so I'm going to turn the idle up while I'm here. It's getting there. A little bit more. We got fuel in the bowls. All right, we got fuel in the bowls. So now that I know that the carburetor's running good, I have no vacuum leaks, everything's good with my ignition timing, the distributor works fine, my electronic ignition is working fine, and I also know that the engine does not have a misfire and all the cylinders are good. Now let's take it all the way apart and let's get a cam in there. Alright, the next step is to actually install the new camshaft into the motor. I picked up some Molly grease in order to make sure that the cam survives the break-in. I also went ahead and picked up the matching lifters, so I got these two as a set. The brand doesn't really matter, but the specs on the cam is a 480 on the lift split and the 230 duration split on a 109 LSA. It's super windy today, but that's still not going to stop me from getting this done. For those of you wondering why I decided to use Molly Lube instead of the standard cam assembly lube is because usually when I don't know something, I always defer to the actual experts and people who have done this several times over. And this was a recommendation that I heard from both Steve Dulcich as well as Richard Holdner, which if you guys know who they are, you guys know that they've put together hundreds and hundreds of motors. So I'm going to defer to them because I'm 100% positive that they know more about this than I do. If I still end up wiping out a lobe like this, well then that's my fault for listening to them. As long as you get the proper result, the rest doesn't really matter. Alright, now that I finally got it all completely torn down, it's time to put the new cam in. Alright, I have my generator running because if not, you guys won't be able to see this, but I have the cam installed with the cam gear ready to go. The only thing that's missing, I've got to install the fuel pump before I can put the timing cover back on. And I'm going to clean the mating surfaces and then put fresh gaskets on that, so no problem there. I've lined up the 361 dot to dot right here, so you guys can see it's at the 6 o'clock position on the cam and 12 o'clock position on the crank. And if you were one tooth off one way or another, you would have definitely be able to tell. I've already checked it a couple times and we're all good to go right there. I've already dropped the distributor gear back in. I wasn't able to remove the distributor gear completely off the motor, so I really just lifted it up, pulled the cam out, put the new cam back in, and dropped the gear back where it was. I don't know if it's going to line up the same that it was before, but it doesn't matter. Wherever the distributor says number 1 is going to be, that's where number 1 is going to be, and I'm not going to mess with it from there. Now it's just a matter of installing the fuel pump and putting the front end back together. The distributor I'm going to be installing is a low deck Mopar factory replacement distributor. This one is made by Proform, part number 6692. It covers the 361 all the way to the 400. If you have like a 413 or higher, or even the tall deck 383, this distributor won't work. You're going to need to use the one made for like a 440. This is essentially just a stock replacement distributor. The only thing that's cool about this one is that it already has a performance-oriented ignition curve built right into. As you guys can now see, everything is put back together the way it's supposed to be. Radiator is in, as well as my entire accessory drive. The cam is in, and now it's ready for break-in. This video is getting really long, so you guys are going to have to wait until next week, and we're going to be going over the whole break-in process and getting everything dialed in. So that's all for today. I will see you guys all in the next one. Night Wrencher